right, let's push the button, right? Welcome. It is your friendship emulator for August 16th. It's a pleasure to be with you. Continuing on in film criticism / education. We're gonna switch it up a little bit and add a super random movie from a list of like 250 new Hollywood new wave, Hollywood new wave, American new wave is what I was looking for. And that's what I came up with. I'm not really sure how you get like E.T. right next to like what do you call it? Like some David Lynch films or something. But we'll work to understand that it's certainly after silent film era, pre-code era. But yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll read a book about American cinema or something. There's going to be one of those randoms, and then bashing my head against the wall trying to understand Czechoslovakian new wave cinema. I'm gonna stop it. This week I watched Daisies by Very Hit Lover, or also, which is what I call Vera Hitlova, the director of the oft talked about Czechoslovakian film from 1966, I want to say, Ikarie XB, also known as Voyage to the End of the Universe, 1963. Brilliant little sci-fi situation we've got going on with that one. It's got this space jazz that found me just really going down a rabbit hole, which is the first thing I want to talk about today. The early history of easy listening music on American radio stations around. I wasn't really able to find one from the Seattle area. I haven't really done an extensive search. Might require some archive.org stuff. It's there. Apparently there's a preservation society for one of these defunct ones now. There's one in, I want to say, Pittsburgh. I have it here. It's WHPFM in Harrisburg switched kind of naturally, as you do, from like a quote unquote beautiful music station to like an easy listening station. And I was drawn to this radio broadcast. There's a bunch of like rips of old radio broadcasts that somehow got like recorded onto tape back in the 70s and 80s, and people love it. Not only is this one from I want to say it says 1978 here, February, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. People love this one, and also it's really good. There's 3 hours of music every 13 or so minutes. There's a guy coming in reading some ads. It's from an era before I was born, when ads got read live by DJs. So some of the things that people said about, like, the top comments on this YouTube video, growing up in Brooklyn, when I didn't get to pick the station, this is what I would call my mother's music, which played quite often. However, there was always a chance to hear a more current song being covered. Now I'm sitting here missing both my mother and enjoying how relaxing this video is. Covered is in quotes here. That's interesting. Listening to this was like taking a step back in time. Living in New York at a time, the beautiful music stations on the FM dial included WPAT, Paterson, New Jersey, WRFM, and WTFM. I'm guessing those are New York, New Jersey, maybe. Some jokingly refer to it as elevator music. Ding, ding, ding. Dentist office music or department music. But regardless, it is beautiful music. Although I haven't heard it in over 40 years, I recognized most of the arrangements, and they remain as fresh today as they were in 1972. And then this guy comes in with a full-on history lesson for us. The quote-unquote beautiful music format dates back to the early 1950s when WPAT AM Paterson, New Jersey / New York City adopted a format of soft, string-laden instrumentals and choral vocals programmed in a non-stop 12 to 13 minute segments. By 1960, there was at least one radio station in every major city programming this kind of format. Most early stations running this format had to program the music themselves, but by the late 60s, there were some companies that had tapes of this kind of music available to local stations. The two major firms in beautiful music radio syndication were Bonneville and Shoal. Some cities like Boston, Shoal Station had by far the most listeners. Both formats were ideal for automation, as tapes could be loaded, programmed, and then automatically played. Both formats, subscribers, one service or the other. Both formats prospered until the late 1980s, when the beautiful music format suddenly vanished. Within a period of a couple of years, most beautiful music stations had changed formats, most to soft contemporary. Others, depending on the individual station, went country, oldies, or top 40. If you have music choice on your cable or satellite service, you will find an easy listening channel with music very similar to what Bonneville and Shoal once programmed. Okay, so what I found fascinating about this is I actually read the Wikipedia for a radio station that is now called The River, and it is this radio station, I believe, in somewhere between like 88 and 93. They went through a series of different call number changes, and I think they were just, I don't know. I maybe they're, because when the guy was talking about covers, it's very similar to like the Muzak format, which if I remember correctly, even then, and again, the 80s, most of the 80s before my time, but that was not for profit, and it could not be played on radio stations, only in department stores for the very reason that it was not for profit, right? So it was like, it was a music that served a purpose. And that purpose was, we want people in the dentist's office and the department stores and the elevators to be to have a little bit more pep in their step. It was like this weird philosophy. But the thing that interests me about it, that concerns me, I listened to, I think it was like the Stuff You Should Know podcast, or 99% Invisible, perhaps, Roman Mars's podcast. I want to say it might have been 99% Invisible. If not, it was Stuff You Should Know. You could probably find it. It's about a musician's strike. I think they did a replay of it. It was a program they had recorded from years back, but they did a replay of it when Starbucks and Amazon started going crazy with the union drive. There was such a different landscape. I don't know precisely that there was government funding for musicians, but these American media companies that almost certainly get some sort of subsidies from the government, are almost like governmental agencies in themselves, how financially large they are. They used to employ, this is the thing, like they used to employ so many just like session players, string instruments, horn instruments, whole like chamber orchestras of just like working class creative people. And I don't know, a week or two ago I was listening to like Janelle Monáe, and some stuff, it's hard to think of another example of an artist. She's a great example of an artist that takes the old style of music orchestration and uses it as this like brilliant, lush, like pastiche over a much more modern like hip hop sound, hip hop neo soul, almost like, damn. To compare Janelle Monáe to Erykah Badu, it's like it's like neo soul or something. It's like second wave neo soul, but it's tragic that having just a little bit of a stringed instrument, just like real beautiful classical instruments. It used to be a standard thing. Also in the 60s, which I'll talk about with this Ikarie XB1, they had keyboards that were like, the simple fact that they couldn't get like an 80s style, like they were inventing instruments that had what do you call it, dynamics, like sound volume dynamics to them, almost out of necessity. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, beautiful music. I've been listening to these radio broadcasts over and over and over. What I find is that there was bossa nova at the time. It was popular and in vogue from like the late, 1963 for Ikarie XB1 to have like bossa nova space jazz sounding stuff, very ahead of its time. But by the 70s, 73, for example, this one, the WHP broadcast, which I don't know, maybe I'll link it in the show notes or something, but I'm talking about it quite a bit. There's something about bossa nova music that almost reminds me of like drum and bass now. Like it was like people were crazy for it, and it must have sounded so cool at the time to be like, wait, well, but wait, what? And it's like the first time you're just like a random white person from like fucking Philadelphia. You're like, wow, this is what music outside of the little bubble we've created is. So yeah, beautiful music. Check it out. It sounds like Seafeel or like Amon Tobin or something. There's these like new school electronic like IDM things, or like I don't know how to describe Seafeel, but like Aphex Twin did remixes of them. They're like an ambient. It's hard to call them an electronic band because I think they use like a real bass guitar and stuff. They have deep like ambient lounge vibes, and they use some of those bossa nova rhythms with like, I don't know, just keyboards and lots of reverb. And it's amazing. There was stuff that already sounded almost identical to that in the early 70s. But apart from that, what I wanted to talk about today, let's just go through the Wikipedia articles that I got. I've been looking at this one over and over because I'm thinking, oh, this might be good for the show. And there's some good stuff here, but We'll see if I can peruse it and remember. A list of common misconceptions. There was one that was like really crazy to me. Searing does not seal moisture in meat. Fortune cookies, Hydrox, George Washington Carver. You can almost just read the first word of these and know what it's talking about. Steak tartare. This one, it's crazy. I don't even believe it. Okay. Microwave ovens are not tuned to any specific resonance frequency. Okay, there's a whole thing about microwave ovens. This is a whole list. Microwave ovens do not cause cancer, as microwave radiation is non-ionizing and therefore does not have the cancer risks associated with ionizing radiation such as X-rays. No studies have found that microwave radiation causes cancer, even with exposure levels far greater than normal radiation leakage. So is that just like a conspiracy theory that everybody with like a microwave believes? It's strange. Let's see here. Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was not the first animated film to be feature length. El Apostol, a lost 1917 Argentine silent film that used cutout animation, is considered the first. The confusion comes from Snow White being the first animated feature-length film to use cell animation, which is what most animated films were made with following its release. And that's cell for celluloid. At the very top of this, legal tender laws in the United States do not state that a private business, a person, or an organization must accept cash for payment, though it must be regarded as valid payment for debts when tendered to a creditor. Adidas is not an acronym for All Day I Dream About Sports, All Day I Dream About Soccer, or All Day I Dream About Sex. Wait. And that links to the Korn song. That's crazy. The company was named after its founder, Adolf Adi Dassler, in 1949. The backronyms were jokes published in 1978 and 1981. Backronyms. A backronym is an acronym formed from an already existing word by expanding its letters into the words of a phrase. Many fictional espionage organizations are backronyms. Okay. Where was some other good ones on the list of common misconceptions? Food and cooking, Twinkies. Oh, the thing about Twinkies is you can't do that. You can't do that to them. Don't do it. Leave the Twinkies alone. Leave the Twinkies alone. No, I'm kidding. We all know what the misconception about Twinkies is. They don't last forever. They don't last. With the exception of some perishables, properly stored foods can safely be eaten past their expiration dates. I knew that. Seeds are not the spicy part of chili peppers. In fact, seeds contain a low amount of capsaicin. What is the best? The highest concentration of capsaicin is located in the placental tissue, the pith, to which the seeds are attached. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes a lot. It's the same area, you know? Turkey meat is not particularly high in tryptophan? What? Okay, this is news to me. Does not cause more drowsiness than other foods. Drowsiness after holiday meals such as Thanksgiving dinner generally comes from overeating. Is overeating for real? For real. Okay. Microwave ovens are not tuned to any specific resonance frequencies. Oh yeah, they don't they only heat up the outer tissue of like, so if you put like a giant breast of chicken that's like already cooked or whatever inside of a microwave, it heats up by agitating the water molecules the first like centimeter or two of like the outside of it, and then the rest of it is just heated by the heat from that. I read that somewhere in here. I was just like, off the dome there. You know, I'm just going off the dome with my common misconception things I learned. Potato chips were not invented by a frustrated George Specht in response to a customer sometimes given as Cornelius Vanderbilt. What? Complaining that his French fries were too thick and not salty enough. Who is Cornelius Vanderbilt? Nicknamed the Commodore, was an American business magnate who built his wealth in railroads and shipping. Oh, so it sounds like a fucking, sounds like some kind of a the Samuel Clemens guy's stories. Eskimos do not have a disproportionate number of words representing snow in their languages. The myth comes from a misconstruction of Franz Boas's original statement, noting that Eskimos had a variety of words for various snow-related concepts. Boas noted that the same was true to a lesser extent for English. See, for example, blizzard, flurry, squall. However, Eskimo languages do have many more root words for snow than does English. Well, wasn't that the root word thing? Language. The Chinese word for crisis is not composed of the symbols danger and opportunity. The first does represent danger, but the second instead means inflection point, the original meaning of the word crisis. The myth was perpetuated mainly by a campaign speech from John F. Kennedy. Oh. Interesting. Ronald Reagan was never seriously considered for the role of Rick Blaine in the 1942 film classic Casablanca. I did not know that. Oh yeah, so in the classic zombie film, George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, they don't actually refer to them as zombies, but instead as ghouls. They did use zombies in the sequel, however. Walt Disney Studios, Snow White, Seven Dwarfs, not the first animated. Oh yeah, I said that. Spices were not used in the Middle Ages to mask the flavor of rotten meat before refrigeration was invented. Spices were an expensive luxury item. Those who could afford them could afford good meat. And there are no contemporaneous documents calling for spices to disguise the taste of bad meat. I wonder if it was a serious risk to eat bad, like spoiled meat. Whipped cream was not invented by Francois Vatel. The recipe is attested at least a century earlier in Italy, but the name creme chantilly was only popularized in the 19th century. Catherine de Medici and her entourage did not introduce Italian foods to the French royal court and thus create French haute cuisine. Haute cuisine is like a whole thing. Grand cuisine is between high-level establishments, gourmet restaurants, and luxury hotels. Meticulous preparation and careful presentation of food at a high price. Okay, it just means expensive food. I think it's just about time at close to 30 minutes in to hit the film button. That's right. You're about to hear a little bit of film projector sound, and let's talk about Daisies. All right. And we're back. One of the things I didn't mention here, the fortune cookie thing. What do you think the fortune cookie thing is? Not a Japanese thing or not a Chinese thing. it was introduced to America by Japan for some reason, somehow. In China, they're considered American. Another weird thing that I learned about, okay, pad thai. I think it was probably from one of these. Freaking pad thai was invented by the Thailand government in like the 40s or something. It's very interesting. Anyway, we're going to talk about Daisies, but first and foremost, all right, so what is my obsession with Czechoslovakian New Wave cinema? I don't know, right? And I just, you hear about it, I guess, a lot. I don't know. It's something I always had like curiosity about. In trying to formulate some sort of cohesive thoughts about what it all means, I don't know. I was sort of, I guess, reminded by a supporter of mine that one of the things that I'm a lot more interested in is the sort of global class struggle that's been going on here for a while between the haves and the have-nots, aka the northern people and the southern people. But yeah, it is I guess kind of a weird place to be in, not knowing what to say. I don't know. Not knowing what to say about a predominantly white nation. I suppose it's right that I was criticized for it because, there were, from Nelson Mandela to, I think, South America to places in Asia, South Africa, North Africa. Anyway, The Battle of Algiers is a film, classic, highly regarded movie that we will be promptly adding to 3 weeks out. We like to plan 3 weeks out here. So because Battle of Algiers is I think it's either a French movie directed by an Italian guy or an Italian movie directed by a French guy. I don't know. Excuse me here, a little froggy. We'll watch that one 3 weeks out. Next week is going to be the beer movies, Beer Fest and Strange Brew. Not in that order, opposite order. And then Skinamarink and Blair Witch Project the week after. We're going to get into some spooky stuff. And then Battle of Algiers, second one we're going to find out right now, because we do have a random picker. And we can open it here. Over 250 new Hollywood films. And I don't know where to begin, especially with, these were all taken from the Wikipedia article on the same subject. Let's spin. Let's get a random. I might have seen them. I've seen a good amount of these before. Oh my God. The killing of a Chinese bookie? Holy shit. What the hell? Can I really? 1976 American neo-noir crime film written and directed by John Cassavetes. Oh, I know him from somewhere. Dirty Dozen. Oh, Rosemary's Baby? He is an actor. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Killing of a Chinese bookie. Cosmo Vitelli owns and operates a nightclub, Crazy Horse West, on the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. Spends a great deal of his time and effort designing, choreographing the venue's artistic burlesque act. He fears his customers are there only to see the naked bodies of his performers. I mean, okay. Are we gonna get a taxi driver Holden Caulfield in out of this one? Is that what's going down? All right. So, damn, killing of a Chinese bookie and the Battle of Algiers. We're just going straight south of the border and confronting the violence that that Otto von Bismarck has unleashed. All right. Should be an interesting ass conversation. Again, that was completely randomly chosen. Now, on to Daisies. So, Daisies, I didn't take any notes on it, but I will say that it reminded me almost immediately of this short film from the early 80s that I found on YouTube through like some sort of weird Reddit hole, rabbit hole. It's called Possibly in Michigan. It is quite possibly one of the weirdest and most unwatchable like short film. Like, I don't know how many short films I've seen, but it appears to be almost testing your ability to get all the way through it. But it's very interesting. I've seen the first part of it a million times. I finally watched it all the way through, which I realized I hadn't done before because, yeah, it's just super weird and like off-putting. It gets into like some low-budget gore. But yeah, basically, it's a short film set in Michigan, or it's set in a mall, and there's lyrics to a song that says, "Have we met before? Possibly in Michigan." It's almost like an extended music video with a little bit of dialogue in between, but it's these two girls, and they're like, "Oh, well, Joyanne," I don't remember what their names are, but it's like Joyanne and Mary are the best of friends. They have two things in common: violence and perfume. And it goes around like they're going around the mall. There seems to be an abandoned mall at one point. You don't see. There's not a lot of like extras in it. It's a low budget movie. I don't know what to say. That's probably what accounts for that. But basically, they're like two girls that are, their whole MO is walking around shopping centers and attracting older men and then like getting to know them and then I guess killing them. It's not a lot of hard structured plot happens, but it's like a lot of songs come in and out where they're like something about a cannibal. I see a Hannibal cannibal. I don't even know. It's super out there, and at about 8 to 10 minutes in, it starts to get so weird that you just don't want it. You just want to say fuck it. But Daisies, okay, that's not what Daisies is like, but it's like suspicious, right? That it's like Possibly in Michigan seems like it was pretty directly influenced by Daisies, but what Daisies is more Vera Hidlova was trying to create a really wacky creative piece of art that was like a caricaturizing women in a way where they were like, not only were they like dolls, but they were acting like super silly. And the way their relationship with like food is very strange, and it's hard to think of anything other than the sort of climax of this movie. It doesn't make any sense. It's meant to be very artsy, I guess, but what it does do is give you a moral grounding and a sort of call to action about what should be on your political radar or in your political perspective. Okay, so the ending of the movie is basically a giant food fight. It's been described as such. It's not quite that, as much as it is two strange caricatures of like ditzy girls playing with their food, I guess you could say. They're playing with their food, but it's not their food. It's the food of like a bunch of random, I don't know. It's very strange because they come upon it by walking through this empty banquet hall, and they're always just sort of creating chaos. Basically, the entire the first like hour or so of the movie is them hanging out in their apartment or hanging out outside, leaned against some building, and they're talking to themselves or they're talking to an older guy. It's one or the other. They're talking to each other and going, "I'm so bored. We should find a new type of food to eat." Or they're actually in a restaurant. They frequent the same restaurant a few times, and their whole goal when they do this is they get some guy to bring them to what it's honestly, it's probably presumably their favorite restaurant or something, and they get him to buy them dinner, and then they go, all right, and it's always the same train that he leaves on. And it's kind of awesome. They're using their like looks for this seductive purpose of kind of just getting free food. It makes you wonder if and it hadn't even really occurred to me actually watching it, maybe not until now, but it's like, why do they need the food so bad? Like, there was some sort of calamity with food shortages, right, in the late 60s, especially in Czechoslovakia. But then again, there was also like bombs and shit. Like, I don't know where or why it cascaded into this violence. But the very ending of the film is just a moral appeal that is like, okay, we fucking okay, so over footage of like buildings being destroyed and what I presume is the Prague Spring or something related to it, they're like, this movie is dedicated to people who think that when you step on a piece of lettuce in a film set, that's as bad, that's the only evil in the world. Well, and you're watching like this like full scale like war like destruction of buildings happen, and it's like very interesting because I went back and I watched the what is it, the Cinematique or whatever it's called, the NYU television like talk show about where they cover specific films after like showing them on their channel or whatever. So they showed this movie on their channel, and they had Vera Hezlova to the studio. One thing that was really funny, I found out that she is a politician now, and she kept on speaking English. Like, okay, the whole interview was set up, and like the guy explained it. What's his name? Shout outs to Jerry Carlson. the host of that show. He was explaining it very, very succinctly. He's like, we have this translator here. I'm gonna like do my English, and she's gonna answer my questions in Czech, right? And she's like, and I don't know if it has something to do with Czechoslovakia. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's very curious, you know. Well, the curious thing about it is that she wasn't giving, as you know, as someone who comes from like a communist country and had problems with the regime, central planning, maybe you wonder if that comes from a place of disappointment or a place of hatred. And she wasn't giving this guy, the translator, an honest day's work, right? So it's under socialism, the workers, you know what I mean? It's like, you have to wonder. But then they went on to talk about a number of different things. She explained her whole, it's like a caricature, like a Barbie or whatever. And she also said that she was kind of like thrilled with herself about the whole food thing. You know, and she said something like, oh, even now they're like yada yada blah blah, but she's become a politician now, in like the parliament of Czechoslovakia or something, and she, shortly after Daisies was published, it was banned for a number of years. So I think in '66, and then by like '69 or the early '70s or so, it was unbanned. I think, don't quote me on this, but the government approached her and essentially asked her to like make like watered down versions of her previous works, and she's directed like a good 20 plus films. I want to say maybe in 40. She was very excited to be talking about like her new projects and stuff. And I think this episode must have aired, I didn't take that part down, but I think it must have aired in the 2000s sometime. It's a super weird movie with a lot of super weird editing choices in it. It doesn't have too much of a structure, but it will make you sort of laugh out loud and how silly it is, especially with, I think the funniest part about the most entertaining and best part of the film is when they just keep repeatedly throwing these old men onto the same train platform after coming from the same restaurant and getting free food because they were like wearing a cute dress or whatever. It's very funny. Other parts of it are a little bit like cringe and like XD so random Hot Topic style. You know what I mean? I didn't really take too many notes on it. I just thought it was goofy, you know? Maybe somewhere down the line I'll remember that I need to get back into Czech New Wave, because there seems to be like 3 or 4 other really, really good movies here. But I really loved Ikarie XB 1. And if you give me a chance to let me clear my throat over here, that's going to become a catchphrase around here until I finally convince myself to not smoke, or at least not smoke on recording days. We're going to talk about Ikarie XB 1, Voyage to the End of the Universe, and its brilliant space jazz. That's right. Continuing on in the discussion about censorship in Czechoslovakia, it looks like 1966, The Hand, and then let's see here, banned Czechoslovakian films. It looks like at least like 7 of them were banned. That's kind of alarming. All My Countrymen, The Cremator, The Ear, The Fireman's Ball, and Sting. And all of these are from 67 to 69. So from 66 to 69, there were at least 7 Czechoslovakian films, censored by the government. It looks like part of that might have to do with there was some sort of a, here it is. Czech film industry suffered significantly after World War II, and film distributors couldn't keep up with the demand for new movies. Yeah. All right. Well, it's interesting that a lot of them were banned. One of them that wasn't banned is Ikarie XB1, and I enjoyed this a lot. It opens with the startling monologue from the main character. Earth doesn't exist. Earth never existed. There's these great, I don't know if they use some kind of like gossamer or silk or something. There's these great shots where they made sets, like space sets. It takes place on a space station, and it's like this little thing in the beginning that seems almost like an advertisement, where it's like, oh yeah, the Ikarie XB1 crew is in fact a colony of 40 individuals, and basically their mission is to go find life on Alpha Centauri. And because they know that X amount of planets are going to be in like the Goldilocks zone or whatever, they're definitely going to like find some kind of new life or something. It seems fantastical. It seems weird. So at about 20-25 minutes in, there's this great, so it shows like this interesting, like egalitarian sort of life. It's almost like in Starship Troopers, where like all the soldiers are like showering together. It's like co-ed. They're like in these all kind of like sexy looking bathing suits, and they're like, the men are like bronzed and shit, like super buff, like incredible. I don't know, but they're kind of sexy, and they're like doing gymnastics and stuff. And then they have like, they're going to like a dance one night, and there's it's like 40 people, but the scene where they're dancing is like really cool. It's like tension ensues when like in the middle of, after like this second song. And what's cool is the music. It's like really crazy. This almost like led me into my obsession with like the beautiful music. What it was, what it really was people who didn't want to hear electric guitars or like any of that stuff, but somehow like bossa nova and like crazy, almost doo-wop sounding like keyboard solos were okay. Editor's note, I meant to say bebop here, not doo-wop. It's strange like how and why they sort of drew these lines, right? It's like people who are like, the only kind of music I don't listen to is rap. I call it crap, It's like very weird. That stuff's so good. And it's like built on like soul and funk and like older, I don't know. It's basically what I'm saying is that it seems it to come from a place of tacit American racism. So in about Act 2 of Ikarie XB1, they encounter a UFO, and they're pretty certain that it's like an extraterrestrial race. And they go, they have these like Michelin Man astronaut suits. It shows them like suiting up, and they're like, oh, we have to go, like 2 men just like by themselves to try and get inside of this vessel. They go inside. these little cosmonaut suits that make them look like gray Michelin men, and they see that it's made of aluminum alloy. They go, oh, it's aluminum alloy, which at the time I suppose would have been an extremely futuristic invention. They were like, oh, this is medieval. They find a number on the door, like an Arabic number, and they go, oh, there's humans. And they go inside. There's like basically rich people. It's meant to be like a swanky little like cruise ship or something. They're very confused about like who or what or why, you know. The whole time I'm thinking, because it does a little time jump in the beginning, and we revisit the scene where I think the main character's name is Michael or something. He's kind of going crazy. What happens is, so when they go into this vessel, they create some kind of a radiation exposure on their vessel. Only the thing about the radiation is it makes them fall asleep for some reason. And the scientists on board somehow figure out that they're going to fall asleep now for like 60 hours. And that's, you know, scientifically calculated to be what's about to happen. And they're like engaging all these auto systems on the ship because they don't have the energy to like maintain it. Everybody's like in their little operation room, literally just falling asleep. And then after only 24 or so hours, they wake up. And it's like, we woke up. I don't really know what happened. And Mikkel's going crazy, and he's like, he has a gun and stuff, right? Which is what the opening scene is. And he's like, they're like trying to get him back into the medical bay so that they can like heal him from the radiation sickness. And then miraculously, everyone just like starts to get better. And we're nearing like the end of the movie here, right? They just like sort of start to get better, and they're like, I don't really know what's going on. What there was like, they tried to get in touch with Earth. The reason Mikkel was like trying to leave the vessel is because he wanted his own like escape pod that he could just connect to and like go back to Earth, because he didn't think that he was gonna like live or whatever. He's like, he was kind of just going crazy. He's like, give me a vessel. I want to go back to Earth. Like that, he's like all fucked up looking. He has like, he's sweating. There's like lesions on his face and stuff. And then things just miraculously start to get better until they realize that they're like approaching some planet. And I don't know, I almost didn't remember this part. I was watching it on stream or something, and I like didn't remember. Wait, how did the movie end again? I'm so confused. How did it end? And it's very weird. So basically a force field goes around them, and they approach this planet, and it looks exactly like Earth. So I guess you're meant to, after the fact, think about the UFO. They were just like humanoid. It wasn't actually humans, but it must have been humans because they used our number system. But then they had radiation, but then I don't know. It's like a miraculous little ending where it's like, oh wow, and then it like zooms in. It's like, this is like a whole civilization. It looks very similar to some American city. It probably is like an actual shot of some American city, but it looks nice. I don't know if it looks like more futuristic than 1963 or whatever, but it looks nice. And anyway, I don't know how to look at this movie. I don't know how connected. I don't know if I know enough about history, you know, to like connect this to some broader metaphor. But it seems like sort of at the halfway point, they're kind of just like, well, we either need to keep going or we need to turn back, because we have radiation poisoning or whatever. And like some people want to turn back. And if that's like some sort of metaphor for like communist society and whether to give up on it entirely after pitfalls, I don't know, but it's a profoundly different movie from the same sort of group of directors as Valerie and Daisies, and it's just not random like that. It gets hectic, almost like a Safdie Brothers movie or something, really stress-inducing, and it picks its moments when to do that, but it doesn't have like random things happening. You know what I mean? Like there aren't like random cuts of like an orange being peeled or whatever happens in Daisies, where it's like there's like dilapidated houses and like oranges and like the weird scene where they're like cutting each other with the scissors, but then like the film itself becomes cut. It's just like, okay, that's trippy, but like, what is that? What there's not really much of a story there, you know. There's a pretty decent plot to Ikarie XB1, and I don't know if that's the metaphor there, but as far as like the shot, some of the cinematography, it's really ahead of its time, and it's really interesting. I would super recommend it. It's not my favorite movie of all the ones I've done for this series, but it's pretty up there. I think Sonatin was my favorite so far. But yeah, that's it for Czechoslovakia. There's after I do this Battle of Algiers and Killing of a Chinese Bookie, we're gonna look at Romania, I think, if I can remember to do that. There was a little bit of an explosion in Romanian filmmakers in around 2010, 2014. And I want to look at one or two of the star directors of that. It's called the Romanian New Wave. You know me, I'm always on the cutting edge. I got that new tendency, that bossa nova. Oh, by the way, I learned that it's a fun fact. I was like, new wave, bossa nova. I knew that like bossa nova translated to new beat, but tendency is another translation of the word bossa. It's like the new way, you know? It's like the new way. I'm just gonna start calling all these film movements bossa nova movements. that's the idea. The bossa nova laughter yoga. I had already decided that, oh yeah, that's the interesting thing about Ikarie XB1 that relates to the funny title that I already thought of for today's episode. There's something to be said for Soviet Russia's treatment of occupation and profession and all that stuff. There's these specialized professions on the Ikarie XB1 spaceship, and it's like, I don't know. I'm not a super skilled economist, but I think there's something there to look into about what is a profession, what is it that fulfills a person, and then what is it that's like useful to society. But it's very utopian, you know. We got the archaeologist, you know, we got the anthropologist that you needed to decipher what was going on in that spaceship right here, you know, as we just like kind of made a mistake by not sending them. Maybe a radiation specialist would have been a good idea before they all got the radiation sleep. I didn't know that that's what happens. I don't know if that's what happens. You fall asleep. But yeah, it's about the hour mark. It's time for the podcast to say goodnight moon and fall asleep itself. It's been fun. I hope that my voice wasn't too froggy on this one. I'm a little bit self-conscious about that sometimes. Join me next week for some kind of low-key movies. I won't have to use my noggin or think about history too much. I want to say it's like Louis Anderson or someone in Strange. I don't remember who's in Strange Brew. Strange Brew and Beer Fest. I might even have a little bit of something to drink while I'm watching these movies. I'm staring at a airport bottle of Grand Marnier right now. That's pretty much what I like to do is the hard A. Not a beer person, but maybe I got to get some beer, you know? Feel a little bit queasy during my viewing. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in 1 week. Peace.